Welcome to Passport to Wealth, the podcast for U.S. expats ready to take charge of their finances while living abroad. I'm your host, Arielle Tucker, a certified financial planner, enrolled agent, and fellow expat, here to help you navigate the complexities of cross-border life with clarity and confidence. Welcome back to Passport to Wealth. I'm your host, Arielle Tucker, and today I am joined by one of my favorite cross-border financial planning colleagues, Jane Mepham, who is also a certified financial planner and the founder of Elgon Financial Advisors. She's dedicated to serving immigrants, foreign nationals on work visas, and globally mobile professionals in the U.S. With her own lived experience navigating the complexities of international finance, Jane combines deep technical expertise with personal insights to help clients build wealth while managing the cross-border realities of tax, legal, and financial systems. At Elgon, she specializes in international tax implications, foreign asset reporting, cross-border retirement planning, and estate planning challenges unique to expats and globally mobile families. She's also the host of the International Money Cafe podcast, where she explores the financial, tax, and lifestyle issues foreign-born families and U.S. expats encounter, making her a trusted voice and thought leader in the cross-border financial planning space. And Jane, you and I finally met in Texas in person this year, and we were presenting to other financial advisors who are interested in cross-border financial planning. So it's so fun to finally meet you in real life, and now we're back together on the podcast, hanging out, and we're gonna run through some of the topics that we actually discussed at the XYPN planning conference. So for anyone who wasn't able to join us there, or the lay person, we're gonna start to break down some of the topics that we covered there.
That's fantastic. Actually, meeting you, hanging out a couple of days even before the actual conference was probably one of the highlights for me. And then, of course, being in that room with you, it was absolutely amazing. So excited to be having the conversation today.
And it's so different speaking to other financial advisors, right? Because they all are coming to, like, most of those people in that room were other certified financial planners. Right. So they're all coming with an elevated understanding of what does financial planning mean. And the thing that's so special about that XYPN community is really so many people who are passionate about fee-only financial planning. And it's important to distinguish what that actually means for our audience, because people might not realize that their financial advisor is making, commissions off the sales of products that they're buying. And so one of the things you and I are both so proud to offer is true fee-only financial planning, meaning you are paying us for our time and our expertise. We have no incentive to sell you anything because you've already compensated us. So we're truly being held to that fiduciary responsibility as a certified financial planner.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really cool things is because, let's say, for example, I'm working with somebody that just got into the country. They got great income, but they don't really have assets to manage. They really don't need all these other commission products. So being able to offer them fee-only planning where they just pay out of their salary is honestly great. And I feel like it's allowed me to actually work with more people in this space. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that was just interesting, being in that room with all those financial planners, we were in a sold out session. And one of the things that was so interesting was all the questions that we had, right? They were all over the board. There were some country-specific questions. There was a lot of immigration questions. There was a lot of investment management questions, or, it was a lot of tax questions. It was all over the board. And it really, to me, highlighted the importance of what we do in the cross-border space. We live between worlds, and that's really our role, right? You wouldn't go to a normal financial planner and ask them about immigration issues, but somehow you and I are kind of expected as, two immigrants, expats, to understand high level What are the things that you need? What are the things you need to do to come into a country? What are the things you need to go to another country? Right? We're kind of expected to know that, right? What are the tax implications in the United States, but then also in either your home country or the country you're going to? Like, we're kind of expected to know so much more than just like the basics of financial planning. And it just, to me, that those conversations that we had in that room highlighted the need for this profession and highlighted why, when you are thinking about moving abroad, you need to make sure that your current advisor or advisors that you're interviewing actually understand these complexities, and they aren't just saying, I'll figure it out. Because let me tell you, Jane and I have so many stories of people who come to us after they've changed tax residencies, after they've made the move, and they thought they could figure it out or their advisor could figure it out. And at this point, when they come to us, a lot of the planning doors that those levers that we like to pull are closed. And we can say, okay, well, we can't go back at this point, but we can go, do this kind of going forward. So it's just really important to have honest conversations. The other thing that I want to just kind of point out is you and I are both cross-border financial planners. Our knowledge, our expertise, who we serve, it's like yin and yang, right? It's so different. Yeah, I always see you on LinkedIn. You're very active. We'll be sure to post your LinkedIn profile information so people can follow you. I love following you. The things that you're talking about seeing with your clients is very different. So could you just start off by maybe digging in a little bit deeper about who are you really serving?
Wow.
Sorry.
That was like a great intro. And I keep thinking, like going back to the conference, let me just go back to that for a little bit. We went in thinking, here's all the things we want to talk to folks about, but they had a bunch of questions to ask. And so going back to who it is that I serve, and the interesting thing is I went into this niche right from the word go. My goal was to work with people like me, people who were born in other countries. They then moved to the US. They could have moved as adults or as kids. It doesn't matter. And so they have a citizenship in another country, for example. At some time, they may be forced to give it up. They start here on a work visa, for example. And so they may end up being here for a while. They may end up being here for a short time. They may end up even retiring here. And so anytime I talk to people, the first question I want to ask or find out is, what's their immigration status? And that is so key. So if they say, for example, they're here on a non-immigrant work visa, let's say H-1B, L-1, or 1, then I know exactly what things we need to talk about, what things they need to watch out for. Because a lot of times you find there's all these blind spots because nobody is talking to people about financial planning as they're preparing to come to the US. And I keep wishing I could talk to them before they do, but that doesn't always happen. So that particular group.
Wait, can we just pause there? Can you just highlight why it's important, especially for the community that you serve? Why should they be calling you before they establish residency in the US, Jane?
So let me give you a quick example. I actually had somebody reach out to me, and good for them. They're about to come to the US on the L1 visa. And so basic conversations is what I'll call it. But we're talking about, okay, when they first land here, what are the things they need to watch out for? There's all the finances, the budgeting, the spending plan, the credit, the credit scores, which everybody wants to talk about. But I'm like, I'm so glad you reached out before you came here because we want to talk about your assets back in your home country. And so I'm like, share your statements. And as soon as I looked at them, guess what happened? They got all these PFICs. And so we'll have the opportunity to actually fix that. And I think you probably talked about PFICs on the podcast. I know we talk a lot about it.
Yep. We'll be sure to link an episode linked to PFICs, because if you don't know what we're talking about, that's passive foreign investment companies. This is such a huge issue for people who are moving into the U.S. If they come with PFICs, the U.S. is going to tax those punitively. They don't care that you bought them when you were not a U.S. resident. Or if you're like the clients I work with, U.S. expats who are just trying to follow the rules and invest in your local country, you may accidentally be buying PFICs. And so this is a huge trap for anyone tied to the U.S. tax system.
So somebody reaches out, you're right. So we'll talk about that and we'll be able to fix that issue before they come. That makes a huge difference. And then once they're here, as we're talking about them getting here, it's really educating them about the U.S. finance system. Now that I'm in it, I sometimes forget how complex it is for somebody that's coming in. Think about like all the retirement plans, and we'll talk about what specific plans they should get into, investment accounts. Really, what are the things they need to watch out for the first year, the second year, and on it goes. And I keep saying the sooner we talk, the better. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it goes the other way too. It goes the other way too. The sooner we talk, the better. If you are still in the U.S. and you want to leave the U.S., let's talk before you leave, right? And it always depends, right? Are you coming from a high tax country, a low tax country, right? How does the U.S. compare into that? It just makes for, really interesting, planning opportunities. So we talked a little about planning before, arrival or departure. Now we talk a little bit more about the compliance pitfalls. So talk to me. You have someone come over on a visa. When do they establish residency? Is it when they get the visa? Is it when they step foot in the United States? Like when do they actually establish residency?
It depends on the visa.
Okay.
So if they're coming on the non-immigrant visa, again, let's use like the L1 example, the H1B visa, they establish residency when they get here. But if they're coming in on, like, let's say, EB-NIW visa, a visa that leads to permanent residency, the day they get it, they become U.S. tax residents. That causes a lot of issue because somebody's like, I got this thing 2 months ago. I'm thinking I want to come over next month. And I have to explain to them, you're already a U.S. tax resident. So the people on the non-immigrant visas, they get here. I'm sure you're familiar with the SPT, the substantial presence test. More often than not, the ones who are coming to work here end up becoming U.S. tax residents the first year they get here. Now, if they come on the F1 visa, which is what a lot of international students come on, which is a visa that I came in on, they have 5 years before they become U.S. tax residents. So we have a planning opportunity for somebody that, let's say, come here on an F1 visa. They're planning on staying on, let's say, the H1B visa. You do have a planning opportunity to kind of fix some of those overseas issues. So it all comes down to your visa type. That's the key thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. And I know there's been a lot of changes in immigration policies and visas. So I'm curious, you come over you have your visa. Is that tied to your job or is that tied to a certain amount of time in the country? And how does that impact the planning?
The work visa, those are tied to your job. So again, H1B is the most common visa. So you come in, XYZ company hired you, your being able to stay in the country is based on you being able to maintain that job.
So if you were part of a round of layoffs, let's say Meta just laid off 600 people, you were a part of this round of layoffs, how long do you have to find another job? And do you stay on the H-1B visa or do you, sorry, and these are a bit of technical immigration.
It's okay. I'll walk you
questions,
through it. Yeah.
But I'm really curious, like when do you have to leave and then potentially end your U.S. tax residency? And how does that work?
So I actually did a Kitz's article and I put this chat together, which I'm happy to share with you, that talks about the different visas and how long you can be in the country on those different visas and what happens to you when you lose a job on that particular visa. Okay, let's use H-1B as an example. So technically you can be in the country for 6 years on the H-1B visa. If you lose your job, you have 60 days to find another job.
60 days?
The country, 60 days.
Wow. Okay.
So when that happens, and I think I also just did another in the newsletter, my LinkedIn newsletter specifically on that, what you need to do is, one, obviously find another job if you can, and they'll be willing to sponsor you. That's one. You can also switch to another non-immigrant visa, most likely switch to an F1 visa, but then that means you got to find a school, you got to apply, and it means you need to find the tuition to be able to pay for that. Or you can switch to a B1 visa, which is like a visitor's visa, which gives you a little more time to be in the country. Now, on the other hand, let's say your spouse is working on another visa, or it could be H-1B visa too, you could switch to become a dependent on their visa. So what I say to folks is you come in, we're talking about the financial planning part of it. Okay, fine, you're on the H-1B visa. I'll ask the question almost right away. I'm sorry, the H-1B, yeah. Is your spouse able to get a job like on an H-1B visa? Because if they can't, not only do you guys have two incomes, but if something were to happen to your job, at least you have the opportunity to be able to switch to that. here's the interesting thing, if you're already here for 6 years and your company has started the green card process for you, depending on where you are, you're able to keep renewing that visa every year. So you may be able to stick around a little bit, but the bottom line is your visa is really tied to your job. Without a job, you're not going to be able to stay in the country. High level.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
like in my own, perspective, being, an immigrant and expat in Europe, we get we have such a longer grace period generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 60 days. I mean, a lot of these application processes to apply for these very highly qualified technical jobs that qualify you for an H-1B visa, that takes more than 60 days. That may be like a 2 or 3 month hiring process. So that's really difficult. And so what I'm hearing is the planning for someone on those visas, just like the mental, emotional state of being on. I mean, you kind of just have to have a lot of cash ready to go,
so,
right?
To your point, we talk about your emergency fund. You may have seen me talk about this. I normally say to people, I need 12 months. I don't think 6 will do it. I don't think 3 will do it. You need at least 12 months just to make sure you have the cash up front, plus the cost of flights home for everybody if it comes down to you have to leave, which is really sad. So the other thing I'll talk a lot about is, you're right, you need that emotional, like you gotta be ready that this could happen. If you lose your job, I hate to say, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, you're not going to be able to say, oh, let me take some time off and just think about my next career. It's almost like you need to be thinking about this constantly. And really the time to do that is when you have a job. So I'll talk a lot about, let's prepare for the next possibility. Let's start networking. Let's start joining all these professional organizations, because honestly, you cannot look at your career similar to somebody who's a US citizen.
Yeah. I completely agree. Very, very stressful. Okay, so another topic that came up in our session was this idea of dual taxation or double taxation. So can you explain kind of how that works for some of the clients that you're working with, or what are the planning opportunities?
Yeah, so the dual taxation, where this comes in, I'm a dual citizen as it is, right? So I need to worry about my home country and what they'll do. So I really have to understand how, for example, Kenya taxes its citizens, whether they're overseas or whether they're back home. Most countries, as you and I know, are residence-based taxation, thank God. Except, of course, US. US will tax you on everything. So if I invest back in Kenya, I need to know that the US is going to be taxing me. The one that I'm seeing a lot of, and I think this kind of came up during the conversation, but we said, let's not talk country specific, but let me use it now as an example because it will illustrate the point. So you have, let's say, somebody that came from India, they moved to the US on the H-1B, L-1, it doesn't matter what visa. They then became a citizen and now they've moved back, right? So they're now literally a US citizen living abroad, because India, for example, doesn't allow dual citizenship. So not only are they paying US taxes, India expects them to pay Indian taxes. And the problem that I've been finding that's really challenging is the way India, for example, would tax things like a Roth account. It's horrendous. They are taxing it like a brokerage account. And so that's where I see the issue of double taxation coming in. When you've come in, you've gone back, and now you have to deal with this. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it really does. And honestly, I'm glad you gave a country specific example, because that goes back to my point of look for country specific experts, because I know I'm sure you get these inquiries all the time. Like I get the inquiry, I want to move to Europe. Okay.
Where?
It's a big continent. We have different treaties. We have different tax rates. We have a lot of different considerations. And it's really important to understand what assets do you have right now and how will your new country treat those assets. And the U.S. is like, right, it's kind of a bully, right? Because regardless of where you are, if you have ties to the U.S. system because you're a U.S. green card holder, you become a U.S. citizen, you're still considered a U.S. tax resident for whatever reason. Once you start doing anything in that foreign country, you have to report that back to the U.S.
Right.
And now, if you're especially in a country with higher tax rates, right, like much of Europe, they might not recognize your HSAs that were so incentivized.
They don't.
Oh, I know they don't. Or
the
the 529 accounts, or the Roth accounts, right? Mm-hmm. All these countries are going to have different rules. And I always describe it when you're working with the U.S. tax system in another country, I'm like, you're walking on a tightrope and you have handcuffs and there's like alligators underneath you. Like someone is going to get you. And so sometimes it's not always, double taxation. It's different taxation.
Correct.
And we talk a lot about this, especially around estate and inheritance tax issues. I'm sure that comes up a lot with your clients, right? It's like the U.S., less than 1% of the population is paying or subject to U.S. estate tax at the federal level, right? It is just such a ridiculously high exclusion that most people don't have to worry about it, right? Unless your parents' estate is worth more than, $26 million, you're fine. Again, check on the state considerations, but at the federal level, for most people. Mm-hmm. Now, you go to other countries, a lot of different considerations and a lot of cultural considerations that are not as, in the U.S., you could leave everything to your cat, no problem, right? But in other countries, we have these concepts of around forced heirship, right? You have to give a certain percentage to your spouse, or you have to give a certain percentage of your children. And if you don't like your kids, well, tough luck. They have a claim of right there. If you are not a citizen of that country and you inherit money as a resident, even if that money is coming from abroad, it still may be subject to inheritance tax because you are a resident there, even though you're not a citizen. So this kind of adds like another layer of complexities. And I'm wondering if you have any good either country specifics or general examples where you've seen this played out.
So the estate tax, estate planning, that's like a huge topic on its own. And it's something we now really need to talk a lot about. The advice you hear from everybody is everybody needs a trust. You can see where I'm going with that, right? Everybody needs a trust. Yep. So I'll have a lot of people reach out and say, I need a trust. And I'm like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why do you need a trust? Well, I have this house in California that's worth $1 million. We have this investment accounts. They're worth so much. And we've been told to be able to protect them, we need to put them into a trust. I'm like, okay, fine. Now tell me, what's your visa status? I'm on H-1B visa. Okay, so are you domiciled here or not? And that is probably one of the toughest questions to answer, because domicile can be, the way you and I understand it, they say it's your permanent abode, and yet you're on the H-1B visa, that's not considered a permanent visa. But if you're on your path to the green card, a lawyer can come in and say, yeah, we think this is your domicile. So what this ends up happening is, if you're going to be considered non-domicile and you have U.S. side as assets, you don't have the 14 million, you only have 60K, which is ridiculous. Think of a house worth $1 million. You only get a 60K exemption. Your family literally has to sell that house to be able to pay for those taxes. And then on top of that, I'll talk to them about, okay, let's say you end up creating this trust. Who's going to be your trustee? Okay, yeah, it's maybe the spouses. What about your successor trustee? Oh, my brother who's in Canada. It's like, oh God, no. Or my brother in France. You cannot do that because you've just put a non-citizen as a trustee. So literally you've just formed a foreign trust, which, as you know, it's going to be taxed heavily by everybody. And so it really comes down to, we have to look, and I say to everybody, we got to start with your immigration status. And I need for you to tell me, it's like, I know all the different stages. Tell me what level you were. And I completely understand. So they'll come in and say, I'm at the PALM stage. I understand what exactly that is because I've gone through it. And then based on that, we can start to figure out what estate planning looks like. But at the end of the day, it's making sure, like, if you have kids, you have guardians. State specific. Some states will not allow non-citizens. Almost everybody here wants their foreign relatives, their parents to be the guardian. So we need to put in a stopgap measure into that. And then we're really not going to create a trust. And if we're going to do it, we really need to think it through. Like, here are all the different things that could happen to it. Do we then want to do it? So it's complex. And I really think that's one area that I feel like we need to do a lot more. And everybody who's here, foreign national, you really need to be talking to your advisors about estate planning and make sure they're looking at it through your immigration lenses. And this is just here, not even before you leave. Does that?
No, I think that's a great example. And one of the things that just kind of triggered my thought process on was, you've got 2 employees who are on the H-1B visa who work at Microsoft. They could have completely different planning opportunities because
yes,
how they came, their intentions, where their relatives are based, right? And so this is where it's like there's the general planning considerations, but really when you're working with, immigrants who are very globally mobile, planning opportunities are going to be constantly evolving. And what you want to do and accomplish today may change in 5 years with
Correct.
with a law change. So a lot to think about. Okay, we're already at time, and I know we could continue talking because we could talk for like 3 hours. So I'm curious, as kind of our final point today, what is one piece of advice or your best piece of advice to someone who is thinking about moving into the United States?
I mean, it really comes down to reach out to a cross-border planner, honestly, and they can walk you through the process. There's no reason for you to spend hundreds of hours trying to figure out what you need to do. You may not need or sign up for ongoing planning, but I think that one-time plan to just help you, to just get somebody to help you come into the country the right way and set you up is probably what you should do. And then you can talk about the overseas stuff, you can talk about the credit, you can talk about, the account and all that stuff. But I really feel that's where people should go. Talk to somebody before you get here is my best advice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And actually, I want to make one more point, and I'm
Sure.
happy to have you expand on this. It goes to creating a collaborative network that you and I spend a lot of time building our networks of professionals that we work with. And I always tell my clients, one of my best, immediate value adds to your situation is I know exactly who you need to be working with, right? I can't do everything. I'm not your immigration attorney. I'm not going to be preparing your tax return. I'm not going to prepare your will, but I know all of those country-specific experts where you're not going to be the first client where they can just figure it out, right? You never want to be the first client.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's pretty much how we met when you think about it, networking with all these other cross-border planners, not only here, I mean, you're in Europe, I'm here in the US. And so I think being able to bring all these people in, I have so many immigration lawyers that I talk to. If somebody comes in and tells me, oh, I need, let's say, the E3 visa, they're from Australia, I know exactly who to send them to. They're talking about, let's say, the TN visa from Canada, I know exactly who to send them to. So you're absolutely right. I think the value that we bring, it's not just the knowledge, I think it's our networks, which I think is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, anyways, I am excited to have you in my network. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise. We will be sure to link all of the podcast, your LinkedIn, the Elgon Financial website, all in our show notes so people can continue to connect with and follow you because I love following your stuff. I have learned so much from other stuff. Enough to know that I'm always happy to say, go talk to Jane. Jane's a great resource. So thank you so much again for joining us on Passport to Wealth today.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for having me. This was fun. Oh, the time went by quickly.
I know.
Yeah.
The content shared in this podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. We encourage you to consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, or other licensed expert before making any decisions based on the topics discussed. Everyone's financial situation is unique, and personalized guidance from a trusted professional is the best way to ensure your choices align with your individual goals and circumstances.